Hello there. So this is the second video of the series that I did earlier on the ISO certification cycle. As I said in the last part of the video that I'm going to do another video on the most commonly occurring non-conformities and how the companies should prepare themselves before applying and before contacting the certification body for the final certification audit. So I will be covering the most repeated issues that every company may have, irrespective of the ISO standard that you may be having. These are the normally the common issues that are out there. And later on, I may do a series which may be specific to certain of the standards, that what are the standard specific non-conformities like a 9001 or ISO 14001, ISO 45001, or maybe ISO 27001 or other standards. I may cover that part later on. But for now, I will give you enough information based on the experience that what are the areas, irrespective of the ISO standard that you are going for, you should look into so that you can safeguard yourself and you can well cover yourself before you go for the final certification audit. So the first nonconformity, the most recurring nonconformity, the issue that we always face every now and then is about the company's internal audit process. So you need to make sure that whatever the certification scope that you are presenting, that your internal audit covers the whole certification scope, and you must have audited all of your department and all the processes within the scope of certification before applying for the final certification audit, before contacting the certification body. And if you may recall, if you may have watched my previous video, I told you that in stage one, the certification audit is done in two stages. So in order for the certification body to proceed from stage one to stage two, they need to make sure that's a requirement of the standard, the 17021 standard, which is followed by the certification body, that the organizations must have completed one internal audit for the entire scope of certification before the certification body can proceed for the final certification audit, which is the stage two audit. So they make sure in the stage one that you have all the records for it, and you need to be very well prepared for that. Now, in that internal audit process, which is most of the time is weak because the whole ISO standard is new, what you need to understand besides the covering the whole scope is that the internal auditors must be trained on the respective standard. What we observe most of the time is that the financial auditors have been assigned with the checklist for that particular, for the other standard, for any ISO standard to come and audit. That's not how really it goes. Those people, even the financial auditors, may do the ISO audit, but they need to be trained at least on that particular standard. And there is another standard which is ISO 19011. They should have the knowledge of the audit cycle, but the other 1911 are the guidelines for auditing. But at least they should be aware about the that particular ISO standard, maybe quality, environment, or health and safety, before they can do the audit. So that's one of the areas that you need to take care of before you are going for the final certification audit. Another thing that you need to take account for within the internal audit process is that this internal auditor, he or she, whoever is assigned this responsibility to do the internal audit, they are auditing the whole organization, but nobody's auditing them. So remember that they own the process of internal audit, which is the 9.2 clause of the standard, and somebody outside their domain must go and audit them as well. And that's how the whole internal audit process gets completed. So you need to pay attention to that internal audit process. And before contacting the certification body, these are some of the key areas that you should covering and be well prepared for. The second nonconformity is about the management review process. Now, it honestly is a very simple process. It's not that difficult. You need to discuss all the agenda points, and they are pretty much elaborative in the 9.3 clause of the ISO standard. But this is the most misunderstood clauses or not complied clauses, in the sense that whenever we do the stage one audit, we find that number of agenda points were never discussed, and the company is doing the management review meetings, and they are some of the organizations, they are doing even quarterly management review meetings to discuss the quality issues or the related issues with less frequency, which is very good. But since they do not have the understanding that the all the agenda points as described in the 9.3 clause must be covered during the management review process, so that's a common issue that we face during the stage one audit, and we notify to the company that you need to complete the management review process to cover all the agenda points before we can proceed for the stage two audit, which is the final certification audit. Then the third issue come in the sense of the documentation, because there is a requirement in the standard to document that those documents you need to maintain. Then company have their own documentation as well, which is all defined within the 7.5.1 A and B clauses of the ISO standard. So this documentation control we find weak normally, and a lot of revisions, different revisions and different versions are present for the same document or for the same formats. Then most of the time procedures are not aligned with the actual practice, so somebody must look into those procedures and policies that you are defining, that are they representing the practices on the ground or not. Either the practices needs to be updated, or the procedure needs to be well aligned with what the people are doing. So that is one of the areas that you really need to look into. And then, as I said, that the different versions were found, and then the records were missing. Normally we go into the audit and we find that the calibration record may not be there, or the training record may not be there, or the supplier evaluation record as required by the standard. So remember that every ISO standard requires certain documents and certain records to be maintained. The requirement of the record is verified in the implementation audit, which is the final certification audit, which is basically the evidence of the requirements implementation. So if you're following the ISO standard, then the all the evidence that I have is the records plus the awareness plus I observe the practices. So that is the third area. There's a third repeated non-conformities that we find, and you need to be addressing that before you contact the certification body. Then there's a fourth area, which is regarding the corrective action. So every ISO standard has a clause, which is 10.2 clause. The 10.2 clause states that whenever you are having an issue at your organization, be that quality, environment, health and safety, information security, business control, so whichever the ISO standard that you're going for, that issue, once it is highlighted, once the incident is highlighted, then you need to follow a process which is called corrective action. So you need to take a correction, which is the quick fix and immediate response, and then you need to do a root cause analysis if there is a need, and you need to propose a corrective action so that the same issue may not recur. Now, most of the time, the we find repeated issues, and the common reason is that either the correct root cause analysis was not done, either the correct corrective action was not been proposed, or if both were done correctly, then nobody followed up that those corrective actions have been taken on the ground or not. So this follow up on the corrective action, evaluating the effectiveness of the corrective action, is a common area that is a lot of the time misunderstood by the organizations, and we found them weak. So if you're thinking of applying for certification, you can well cover yourself over the 10.2 clause, which is the corrective action clause. And lastly, the last repeated nonconformity is regarding the evidence of competencies. So most of the time, missing the training records, and then the job descriptions are not being correctly written down as per the people who are performing those jobs, or if that has been written down, then people may not be well aware about it. And then one important thing is that they may not be well aware about the practices that is coming with respect to that standard into their job description. For example, if you are going for a ISO 9001 quality management standard, or if you are going for environment management standard, so vis-a-vis quality, what people needs to perform, what they need to do, how do they need to identify the non-conforming product, non-conforming outputs, how do they manage it, how do they need to who do they need to inform to. Similarly, environmental practices, so related to my job, what are the environmental practices that I need to be aware of, what are the waste management practices that I should be following on the ground. What if there is an incident? How should I respond to that incident? If I find a violation on the ground, then who do I need to report those violations? So I'm not so workforce is not well aware of the ISO standard, and specifically the part that they need to perform. So, and that questions the competency process, that how the people have been trained on those particular standards, and how the evaluation of their competencies has been done. So the process may come into the question, And basically, it's all about the awareness. How do you provide the awareness? So again, just a quick reference to the ISO standard. So it's the 7.2 clause and the 7.3 clause. Both the clauses we find weak in the organization that you need to pay attention to. So in totality, again, the internal audits, which is my 9.2 clause, management review, which is my 9.3 clause, documentation, which is my 7.5 clause, corrective action, which is my 10.2 clause, and then the competency and awareness, which is my 7.2 and 7.3 clause. And almost these are the clauses are present in any of the ISO standard, which is on a 10 clause structure. So I hope this video may help you in well aligning yourself and well covering yourself before you apply for the certification audit. And this video, the purpose of this video is to provide you prior information so that you can cover these topics well, and hopefully that will help you in acquiring the certification in the first attempt. With that, I like to thank you for listening and hope to see you till I upload my next video. Thank you.